So when we think of Black people in the Americas who are descendants of people who were enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade, we should understand that during every generation, the different groups in the Americas came together to have children, right? However that happened. So let's walk through that, right? So when we think of the Americas and the history of the Americas, it's understood that the first people were the indigenous people, right? So indigenous Americans, and their genetic ancestry at this point in American history is 100% indigenous, right? Then in 1492, the first documented Europeans came, and these two groups had children, right? And so now you have one group that is 100% indigenous American, another group that is 100% European, and then another genetically distinct group that's 50% European and 50% indigenous American, right? And so this is what we call admixture. And so continuing now to walk through the history of the Americas, in the 1600s, the first documented Africans arrived in America. But in the Caribbean, they came earlier, right? They came in the early 1500s. And so now we have, in addition to groups with European and indigenous admixture, we now also have groups with indigenous and African admixture, a group with African and European admixture, and a small group that has admixture with all three groups, represented by the small space where all three circles overlap.
So in other words, when Black people say things like, I have some Native American or some Indian in my family, that's not really true, is it?
It is, but it isn't, right? Because like the science doesn't support it at the levels that that we think, or that a lot of us say that we have. So when we look at like genetic ancestry studies, we see that the average genetic ancestry proportions for African Americans is about 78% African, about 18% European, and about 4% indigenous American. Now I say 4%, but it doesn't, that 4% doesn't mean that everybody has a little bit, right? It's an average. So what it means is there's some people that have a little, and then there's a lot of, or some people that have none,